Welcome to Serial Killers Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Carter. The grim discovery of Anthony Walgate's lifeless body outside a church in Barking, East London, in June 2014, was just the beginning of a chilling tale that would unfold over the next 2 years. The 23-year-old fashion student's death was initially treated as an overdose, but the truth was far darker, far more sinister. Stephen Port, a stocky, bespectacled man with a bowl haircut, was a local chef living in a nearby flat. He was known to be quiet, even shy, but beneath this unassuming exterior, a monstrous personality lurked. Port, it would later be revealed, was a man with a dangerous obsession. For 2 years, Port used social media and dating apps to lure young gay men into his web. He was a spider, spinning a deadly trap, his victims unaware of the fate that awaited them. He would invite these men into his home, serve them a cocktail of drugs, and then violate them. But Anthony Walgate was not his only victim. In August 2014, Gabriel Kovari, a 22-year-old Slovakian, was found dead in a graveyard, not far from Port's flat. Like Anthony, Gabriel had died from a drug overdose, and like Anthony, he had last been seen with Stephen Port. 2 deaths, 2 young lives snuffed out. Yet the police saw no connection. They saw 2 isolated incidents, 2 unfortunate casualties of London's drug scene. But the nightmare was far from over. Just a month later, in September 2014, a 3rd body was discovered. Daniel Whitworth, a 21-year-old chef, was found dead in the same graveyard where Gabriel's body had been discovered. Daniel had also overdosed. In his hand was a suicide note, confessing to accidentally killing Gabriel with a lethal dose of drugs. But the note, it would later be revealed, was a chilling piece of misdirection, a cunning ruse by a man desperate to cover his tracks. As the body count rose, so did the questions. Who was Stephen Port? What drove him to such horrifying acts? And most importantly, could he have been stopped sooner? As we delve deeper into this chilling case, we will unravel the truth. We will reveal the man behind the murders and expose the failures that allowed a serial killer to roam free. The story of Stephen Port is a dark journey into the mind of a murderer, a tale of deception, manipulation, and a tragic loss of life. A story that serves as a stark reminder that evil can lurk where we least expect it. The town of Barking in East London, where Stephen Port resided, is an area steeped in history and tradition. Founded in the 7th century by the Anglo-Saxons, it retains much of its old-world charm with picturesque streets, historic churches, and a bustling market. In the 21st century, Barking has evolved into a diverse, multicultural community, a melting pot of different cultures and lifestyles. Yet beneath this vibrant surface, a sinister tale was unfolding. In the early 2010s, when Port's crimes took place, Barking was undergoing significant social and demographic changes. The town was becoming more cosmopolitan, with an influx of people from different backgrounds and cultures. This period also saw a greater acceptance and visibility of the LGBTQ+ community. However, despite these progressive shifts, certain prejudices persisted, often concealed beneath the surface of everyday life. The online dating scene, where Port hunted his victims, was flourishing. Dating apps were gaining popularity, providing a platform for individuals to connect and interact. For many, especially within the LGBTQ+ community, these platforms provided a sense of liberation, a space where they could express their identities freely. Yet these same platforms also opened up new avenues for exploitation, manipulation, and harm. Stephen Port exploited this digital landscape, using it to lure his victims. He presented himself as a friendly and harmless figure, an unsuspecting wolf in sheep's clothing. He used the anonymity and freedom of the internet to create a facade, masking his true intentions. Social attitudes towards drug use in the LGBTQ+ community also played a part in the macabre tale. Recreational drug use was, and continues to be, a contentious issue. While some view it as a personal choice or even a form of social bonding, others see it as a dangerous habit with potentially fatal consequences. Port manipulated these attitudes, using drugs as a tool to subdue his victims. As bodies began to pile up in the Barking area, The local community was gripped with fear and confusion. The police were slow to connect the dots, viewing each case as an isolated incident rather than part of a larger pattern. The delay in identifying Stephen Port as a suspect speaks volumes about the biases and systemic failures that plagued the investigation. The chilling saga of Stephen Port is set against the backdrop of this complex social fabric. It is a tale that reveals the darker side of a society in flux, a narrative that exposes the cracks in our systems and institutions. It is a somber reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the shadows, even in the most seemingly peaceful of towns. The first known victim of Stephen Port was Anthony Walgate, a 23-year-old fashion student and occasional escort. On June 19, 2014, his lifeless body was found just outside Port's flat in Barking, East London. Port himself had reported finding the body, claiming he had stumbled upon it after returning from a night shift. An autopsy later revealed that Walgate had died of a drug overdose, a lethal dose of the party drug GHB. Gabriel Kovari was next. A 22-year-old Slovakian artist who had recently moved to London, Kovari was found dead in a graveyard near Port's home in August of the same year. Like Walgate, Kovari had died of a GHB overdose. Port had provided Kovari with a place to live, and the two were briefly roommates before Kovari's untimely death. Within a month, another body was discovered in the same graveyard. Daniel Whitworth, a 21-year-old chef from Kent, had also died from a GHB overdose. A forged suicide note was found on Whitworth's body, purportedly written by him, claiming responsibility for Kovari's death and expressing guilt over his inability to save him. The final known victim was 25-year-old Jack Taylor, a forklift driver from Dagenham. Taylor met Port on a dating app and was last seen with him on CCTV footage. His body was found near the same graveyard in September 2015, with the cause of death once again being a GHB overdose. Despite the striking similarities between these deaths, the police initially failed to connect them. All four men were openly gay, all were found in or near the same location, and all had died of GHB overdoses. Yet due to a combination of systemic failures and biases, these glaring links were overlooked. The families of the victims, however, were not so easily convinced. They questioned the police's conclusions and pushed for further investigation, refusing to accept that their loved ones had simply overdosed. As the casualty count rose, so did the sense of unease in the Barking community. Four young men, all leading seemingly normal lives, had met the same tragic fate in a span of just 15 months. The community was on edge, but the true horror of the situation was yet to be unveiled. Little did they know that a serial killer had been operating in their midst, his crimes hidden beneath a veil of systemic blind spots and societal prejudices. In the face of mounting pressure from the victims' families and a growing tide of unease within the community, the police began to reassess the evidence. The recurring location of the deaths, the similar cause, the age and lifestyles of the victims, all these factors started raising red flags. It was becoming increasingly clear that they were not dealing with a series of isolated incidents, but a disturbing pattern of targeted killings. In October 2015, the Metropolitan Police finally acknowledged the possibility of a serial killer. They launched Operation Match, a task force dedicated to re-examining the four deaths. The team pored over the evidence, revisited the crime scenes, and re-interviewed witnesses. The inconsistencies, previously overlooked, now began to emerge glaringly. One such inconsistency was the suicide note found on Daniel Whitworth's body. Upon closer scrutiny, it was discovered that the note was written on the same type of paper that Stephen Port used, and the pen found on Whitworth matched those found in Port's flat. Furthermore, the handwriting was suspiciously similar to Port's, and forensic linguistics suggested that the note was written by someone attempting to imitate a younger person's language and tone. The CCTV footage was another piece of the puzzle. In the footage, Jack Taylor was seen entering the Barking station with Stephen Port. This was the last time Taylor was seen alive. This tangible connection between Port and one of the victims led investigators to delve deeper into Port's background. Upon close inspection, other suspicious circumstances came to light. Port had been the one to anonymously report finding Walgate's body, and he had also been in contact with Kovari and Whitworth prior to their deaths. Even more chillingly, it came to light that Port had fabricated alibis to account for the time periods when the victims had disappeared. As the dots began to connect, the horrifying truth unraveled. Stephen Port, a seemingly harmless man living in Barking, was not just connected to one, but all 4 deaths. The police finally had enough evidence to arrest Port, and he was taken into custody in October 2015, marking a major turning point in the investigation. However, the arrest of Stephen Port didn't just expose a serial killer. It revealed a deeply flawed system that had initially failed to recognize the pattern of his crimes. The negligence and biases that had allowed Port to operate undetected sparked widespread outrage, leading to an independent review of the Metropolitan Police's handling of the case. This review would later result in significant changes to how such cases are investigated, but it came too late for the 4 young men who had lost their lives. Unraveling the mystery behind Stephen Port's heinous acts began with analyzing his behavioral patterns and creating a psychological profile. Port's predilections emerged even before his arrest. He was known for his interests in young men, a preference that was evident in his victims, all of whom were in their early 20s. Port was also known to use dating apps, particularly those catering to gay men, to lure his victims. He would cultivate relationships with them, building trust before inviting them back to his flat. This pattern was consistent in each case, and it was clear that Port used the promise of romance as a tool to ensnare his victims. Further analysis of Port's behavior revealed a disturbing fascination with drug-facilitated sexual assault. In his online activity, he frequented websites detailing this specific form of abuse, and his search history revealed a chilling interest in the lethal effects of GHB. This substance, known as a date rape drug, was found in lethal quantities in all 4 victims. This suggested that Port didn't just use the drug to incapacitate his victims, but that he derived a perverse pleasure from its lethal potential. Port's psychological profile painted a picture of a man obsessed with control and dominance. His actions were methodical and calculated, indicating a high level of cunning and manipulation. The fact that he went to great lengths to stage the deaths as suicides or overdoses showed a chilling level of premeditation. His attempts to distance himself from the crimes, such as anonymously reporting the discovery of Walgate's body, indicated a high level of deceit and a keen awareness of his actions' criminality. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Port's profile was his apparent lack of remorse. Despite the mounting evidence against him, he maintained his innocence, even fabricating alibis to cover his tracks. His callous disregard for the lives he took and the grief he caused to the families of his victims painted a chilling portrait of a man devoid of empathy. As the profile of Stephen Port became clearer, the gravity of his crimes and the depths of his depravity came to the fore. But this understanding also raised uncomfortable questions about the initial handling of the cases. Had the signs been spotted earlier, could these tragic deaths have been prevented? This question, though unsettling, would become a crucial part of the narrative, driving significant changes in the approach to such crimes in the future. The breakthrough in the case came in late October 2015. A re-examination of the initial evidence led investigators back to Stephen Port's flat. A thorough search yielded a startling discovery: a bottle of GHB and other drug paraphernalia. This was the hard evidence detectives had been seeking, directly linking Port to the lethal substance found in the victims. But it was not just tangible evidence that was stacking up against Port. Forensic analysts had been hard at work, examining the DNA evidence collected from the crime scenes. The results were damning. Port's DNA was found on the bedding near the bodies, on the victim's clothing, and in one case, under the victim's fingernails. This DNA evidence would prove to be a cornerstone in the case against Port. Witness testimonies also played a crucial role. Friends and acquaintances of the victims provided accounts of the last time they saw their loved ones, often mentioning their plans to meet a mysterious man they'd met online. These testimonies painted a chilling picture of Port as a predator, using social media to lure his victims. One pivotal moment in the investigation came when police found a fake suicide note in the flat of one of the victims. The note, written by Port, attempted to absolve him from any involvement in the death, but it was the handwriting on the paper that led detectives back to him. Handwriting experts were able to match it to samples from Port, providing another damning piece of evidence. The sheer weight of the evidence against Port was overwhelming. The discovery of the GHB, the DNA evidence, the witness testimonies, and the fake suicide note all pointed to one man, Stephen Port. Despite his attempts to cover his tracks, the truth was beginning to reveal itself, and the net was closing in on the man who would soon be known as the Grindr Killer. Yet, as the investigation progressed, it was clear that this case was not just about bringing a killer to justice. It also served as a stark reminder of the devastation caused by such heinous acts, the lives tragically cut short, and the grieving families left behind. Their stories, intertwined with the pursuit of justice, would become an integral part of the narrative, ensuring they were remembered as more than just victims. They were sons, friends, and loved ones, whose lives were cruelly stolen by a man consumed by a chilling obsession. In October 2015, after months of painstaking investigation, Stephen Port was finally arrested. He was charged with 4 counts of murder and 4 counts of administering a poison with intent to endanger life or inflict grievous bodily harm. The trial began in the Old Bailey in October 2016. The courtroom was tense as Port, appearing gaunt and sullen, pleaded not guilty to all charges. As the proceedings unfolded, the prosecution meticulously presented their case, laying out the stark and grim evidence that linked Port to the brutal killings. Port sat quietly, showing little emotion as the chilling details of his crimes were exposed. Each piece of evidence was presented, from the DNA found at the crime scenes to the fake suicide note written in Port's distinctive handwriting. The damning testimonies from friends and acquaintances of the victims were heard, painting a horrifying picture of their final moments. One by one, the victims' families took the stand, their pain palpable as they shared memories of their loved ones. Their heart-wrenching testimonies served as a stark reminder of the human cost of Port's actions, adding an emotional depth to the already heavy atmosphere of the courtroom. The trial lasted for 6 weeks, and the jury took just a day and a half to reach their verdict. On the 23rd of November 2016, Stephen Port was found guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow as the verdict was read out. Port was sentenced to a whole life order, meaning he would spend the rest of his life behind bars without the possibility of parole. The public reaction was one of shock and outrage. The details of the case, as they had unfolded in court, had sent ripples of horror through the UK and beyond. Yet, amid the outrage, there was also a sense of relief. The Grindr Killer had been brought to justice, and the families of the victims could finally begin to find some semblance of closure. However, the end of the trial did not mark the end of the story. Questions were raised over the initial police investigation, leading to a separate inquiry into potential misconduct. As the full extent of Port's crimes emerged, the spotlight turned to the systemic failures that had allowed him to evade capture for so long. As the case drew to a close, it was clear that the legacy of Stephen Port's crimes would continue to reverberate, prompting wider conversations about online safety, homophobia, and police accountability. To truly comprehend the chilling magnitude of Stephen Port's crimes, it is crucial to delve into the psyche of the man himself. There is always the question of why, a desperate need to understand what drives someone to commit such heinous acts of violence. Port was a man of contradictions. Outwardly, he appeared shy and awkward, a seemingly benign character living with his grandparents. Yet beneath this facade, he harbored a dark, predatory nature. He took perverse pleasure in the control he exerted over his victims, drugging them before carrying out his attacks. Psychologists who studied Port's case postulated a mix of narcissism and antisocial personality disorder. His egocentricity was evident in the way he manipulated his victims, showcasing a lack of empathy and a disregard for their well-being. His deceptive tactics, from creating fake online profiles to penning elaborate suicide notes, indicated a manipulative personality and a willingness to go to great lengths to maintain his deceit. Obsession could also be seen as a driving force behind Port's actions. He seemed fixated on a particular type of victim, young gay men who were relatively new to the LGBT scene. This could perhaps be traced back to his own experience of coming out, which was reportedly fraught with difficulty and rejection. There's an implication here that Port was attempting to exert control over an aspect of his life where he had previously felt powerless. However, these are merely theories. The true motivations of Stephen Port may never be fully understood. It's important to remember that psychological analysis can provide insight, but it does not excuse or diminish the severity of his actions. His crimes were calculated, cruel, and caused immense suffering to his victims and their families. While we can speculate on the factors that may have contributed to Port's descent into criminality, the stark reality remains. He is a man who took the lives of 4 innocent men in the most brutal and heartless manner. His actions have left an indelible mark on the victims' families, the LGBT community, and society as a whole. The case of Stephen Port serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary individuals. In the wake of the trial and Stephen Port's conviction, the impact of his crimes reverberated throughout the communities he had affected. The families of the victims were left grappling with the horror of their loss, compounded by the police's initial mishandling of the cases. The families of Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Cavari, Daniel Whitworth, and Jack Taylor endured the unimaginable pain of losing their loved ones in such tragic circumstances. Their grief was deepened by the frustrating and painful process of seeking justice. They banded together, united in their demand for justice and the truth. Their persistence in pushing for a thorough investigation was fundamental in bringing Stephen Port to justice. The Barking and Dagenham community, where the murders took place, was deeply affected. The tranquility of this community was shattered by Port's horrifying acts. Residents were left in a state of shock and disbelief. Many felt a profound sense of betrayal. Port was one of their own, an individual who had lived among them, undetected. The media played an essential role in publicizing the case. While initial reporting was sparse, media coverage increased as the full extent of Port's crimes became apparent. The case was extensively covered by both national and international press, drawing attention to the issues of online dating safety, drug use within the LGBT+ community, and the police's handling of the investigation. The LGBT+ community specifically was deeply impacted by Port's crimes. The fact that Port targeted vulnerable young gay men caused a wave of fear and anxiety. This case highlighted the potential dangers that members of the LGBT+ community can face, and sparked discussions about personal safety and the use of dating apps. The case also triggered a significant backlash against the Metropolitan Police for their handling of the investigation. The police's initial dismissal of the deaths as drug overdoses and their failure to link the murders led to accusations of institutional homophobia. In 2020, an independent inquiry was launched into the police's handling of the case. In the years following Port's conviction, the repercussions of his crimes continue to be felt. The case has prompted important conversations about safety within the LGBT+ community, the use of date rape drugs, and the critical need for police to take all crime reports seriously. Despite the immense tragedy of the situation, it serves as a stark reminder of the need for constant vigilance and awareness in all aspects of society. As we reflect on the Stephen Port case, several unnerving questions continue to linger. It's disquieting to consider how many lives might have been saved had the initial deaths been investigated more thoroughly. The precise number of Port's victims may never be known, leaving a chilling void in an already dark narrative. Alternative theories, too, remain unresolved. Some speculate that Port may not have acted alone, given the complexity of his crimes. Did he have an accomplice who remains at large, or was he truly a solitary predator? The truth may stay shrouded in mystery, adding another layer of unease to an already distressing story. The haunting implications of this case extend beyond the immediate victims. The potential existence of other uncaught predators, exploiting the vulnerabilities inherent in online dating platforms, is a sobering thought. It's a reminder that while technology has connected us in unprecedented ways, it has also created new avenues for harm. The Stephen Port case also serves to highlight the myriad of challenges faced by the LGBT+ community. The fact that Port specifically targeted young gay men is a stark reminder of the unique dangers this community can face. It underscores the urgent need for greater awareness and protective measures to ensure that all individuals, regardless of their sexual orientation, can feel safe and secure. The response of the Metropolitan Police to the initial deaths is another troubling aspect of this case. The accusations of institutional homophobia that arose in the wake of the investigation underscore the urgent need for reform within law enforcement agencies. It is a stark reminder that prejudice, conscious or unconscious, can have deadly consequences. As we conclude our exploration of the Stephen Port case, it's essential to remember the lives lost and the lessons learned. The victims, and those who loved them, deserve that at least. This tragedy has highlighted the urgent need for vigilance, awareness, and empathy in our society, values that we must all strive to uphold as we continue to navigate the complex landscape of the 21st century. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Serial Killers Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to Serial Killers Podcast on Spotify. Subscribe now.